Ybor City has plenty to crow about.
People having a good time, just doing their thing.
A place steeped in history.
Classic, historic, fun.
Where the coffee is strong.
I like coming here for the food and meeting people.
And the smell of freshly rolled cigars fills the air. But perhaps nothing is more of an institution here than the Cuban sandwich.
Buen provecho.
A well-made Cuban sandwich is one of the nicest things, one of the most delicious things that you can eat in Tampa.
It's a taste of Tampa's history, shared at places like the Ybor City Museum State Park. Chantal Havia, president of the Museum Society, says according to local lore, the Cuban was created here to satisfy the appetites of cigar factory workers logging long hours.
It was an easy way for them to get lunch. It was substantial, but it didn't necessarily put them to sleep.
We start with our ham.
However, when it comes to verifying the sandwich's roots, things get a little dicey.
This is purely conjecture on my part, but who would have thought to document the history of a sandwich? And so it's word of mouth, and depending on who you are and what you've heard, there's a different story to tell.
The Cuban is definitely part of the story and part of the menu since day one at Florida's oldest restaurant, the Columbia.
We start with Cuban bread.
For fifth-generation owner-operator Andrea Gonsmart-Williams, it's practically part of her DNA.
I definitely grew up eating Cuban sandwiches. My little girl has grown up eating Cuban sandwiches.
Andrea likes to think of the sandwich as a mix of the immigrants who contributed to building the city.
Obviously the Cuban bread being the Cubans, the ham being the Spaniards, the pork being the Cubans once again, the salami being the Italians, and then the yellow mustard and the pickles being the Germans. And then I like to say that the Swiss cheese kind of represents Ybor City, which was the melting pot that brought all these different cultures together.
As for any food feud about where the Cuban got its start,
I think if another city tried to stake claim on the Cuban sandwich, I would ask them to have their 100-year-old restaurant give my 100-year-old restaurant a call and we could talk about it.
one thing is for sure, among the pork and pickles, the Cuban sandwich feeds community pride.
What a wonderful thing that on a national scale we can be recognized for this, because it tastes good.
In Ybor City, Lori Davison, Spectrum Bay News 9.
Since I came out of the womb, music was something that was part of our lives.
Because music is the soundtrack to life.
When we're on stage, it's magic. We don't make music, we make magic.
The Beatdown Band has a sound all its own, performing in front of live audiences several nights a week. But in these current chords, there's an echo of Tampa's past.
We're playing in a city that is deeply rooted in culture.
Tampa was once considered the Harlem of the South.
The legendary Central Avenue, lined with restaurants and nightclubs, was at its core.
Central was the place to go and to be.
Former band director Willie Dixon remembers it well.
That was our Harlem, that was our Renaissance. That's where we can kind of come together. We were a community at that time.
Musical greats took note. Ella Fitzgerald wrote A Tisket, a Tasket in Tampa, and Ray Charles recorded his first song here.
Mama, I don't believe you had to go. I don't know whether it was the weather, the atmosphere, or the women, or whatever, but they loved Tampa.
For years, Central Avenue flourished as a main stop for black performers on the so-called Chitlin Circuit. Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, and James Brown were a few of the headliners.
So people had something to look forward to with excitement.
Now, it's just a faded memory marked in concrete. The last business on Central, Joyner's Cotton Club, closed in 1974. With it, went a large part of the city's black music scene.
This is very sad and unfortunate that it's not around anymore.
However, a resurgence is underway.
I think it's coming. I think it's it's making its way back. Through various artists, various music scene.
Perry Harvey Senior Park now sits on what used to be Central Avenue's main drag. Artwork and sculpture showcase the past. And there's new music in the air.
Given a chance, I think the music scene could, it could definitely grow here.
Today's performers drawing inspiration from their musical ancestors.
I think they're more rooted in us than we even know.
Linking the sounds of the city with the rhythm of life. In Tampa, Lori Davison, Spectrum, Bay News 9.
Thank you.
It did break my heart to see that last wall go down.
As a backhoe clears away the debris that was once New Testament Church's fellowship hall, it's sweeping Barbara Devine and Javier Nava up in memories.
I was married in that building. Back then we were all young and we were all getting married. A whole couple after month after month.
Barbara was a teenager when she helped build the church facility with her own hands. Buying some of the bricks was soda money.
If you can buy Coke, you can buy a block and build a church.
Now they find themselves having to build it again after the structure was destroyed by fire. Since then, the congregation has been waiting on the go-ahead to rebuild.
We had to pray every time we had to meet with the county. Every time something else came up, asbestos check, this check, that check.
With this demolition, the process is underway. Javier and Barbara hope the new building will help the church reach new heights.
Rejoice, rejoice, because what God's got planned is greater than what the past was.
They're ready to start building fresh memories with the sky as the limit.
Someone came in and just yelled at us and said that we were being attacked. We commandeered a bus and went down there, and by the time we got down, the towers were already falling. It was chaos. It was totally dust everywhere, pieces of building everywhere. It brings it back. Every September 11th, I gotta go through this. You see a little burn mark, scarred.
The pictures in Jose Ramirez's scrapbook may be faded, but the memories of September 11th, 2001 remain fresh in his mind.
This is something that, I never thought we would go through.
Jose was a New York City detective who rushed to Ground Zero to help after the attack.
It was never heroism. It was mostly fear and our duty.
Jose's duties included identifying victims and digging through a landfill collecting evidence. He retired from NYPD about 5 years later, moving his family to Apollo Beach. But he brought pieces of 9/11 here with him. The soot-covered uniform he wore that day, brick from a damaged building, and souvenirs from the Twin Towers that landed in the rubble.
But you should never forget, like Pearl Harbor. You know what I mean? I think it's history, and it's life, and life's changed after that. Why should you forget? Everything's changed after that.
Through the years, Jose has shown this display to students to teach them about what happened.
I have people even coming crying to me when I tell them my story, and they give me the hug. I like that. You know what I mean? They appreciate it.
Still, Jose's kept some memories for himself. He thumbs through pictures he took at the scene, pictures he's been reluctant to share publicly until now.
I feel peace now, and I think it's time for me to let it go.
But for just a moment, every September 11th, Jose will continue to pause, and he hopes others do too.
That's the lesson. Never forget, always remember.